Welcome back to the live. My name's Matt Bailey. I'm your National Ambassador for the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. And I want to thank you all for tuning into the live. A special thanks goes out to our cellar master, Andrew Durbidge, for hosting last night's live session. I had a bit of a... that moth is back. I had a bit of a stuffy nose and a bit of a congested sinus yesterday, but I've got an amazing immune system, and so I've bounced back very quickly from that. And no, I don't have coronavirus. Thank you for asking. Cool. And yeah, that's where I want to start tonight, by saying thank you to Andrew. And yeah, that's it. It was really actually enlightening to watch his stream. I watched it a bit later on, and it was all in good fun. He had a question from someone saying, about the paper label thing, which I'm going to get to in a second. And I'm going to have I've got a dram actually waiting for me just here. So cheers. I hope you've also got a dram running tonight and have got some great questions for me, because I've got some rippers for you. But what I wanted to treat tonight as is a sort of a part two, if you like. Tonight is going to be a bit of a part two discussion on whiskey fairs and festivals and how to navigate them. Andrew's written about this before. He even spoke about it last night, reflecting on his Dram Fest in New Zealand just recently, last weekend. Whiskey is a good bug killer. That's cool. It is very true, Malia Barry. Whiskey Jules Mojoin, good to see you. Whiskey Man Sam. Sam, hope you're well, mate. So Andrew last night talked about Dram Fest and how to make the most of a whiskey festival. Like I said, he's written about it before. He's talked about it before. I've talked about it before. But there's a few more tips that I want to follow on. We can call this live stream can sort of be part two of that journey, if you like, and some of my personal tips and tricks, especially in the last year or two. I've noticed some of the differences in whiskey fairs and shows that have changed over the last sort of 12 months. And I'd say mostly for the better, but it's still a good way for you to refresh, make the most of that festival ticket. So when you go to a whiskey fair or festival, the ticket's anywhere between, I've seen, as low as 75, as high as 150. They all hover between there for a ticket. Most of them are around $100, $120, somewhere around there. And for that price, you're getting an enormous experience, and it's a huge opportunity for you to make the most of your session. So I'm going to give you my tips and tricks. This is sort of part two from last night's stream with Andrew. This is my tips and tricks for how to make the most of a whiskey fair or festival if you're attending one. And even if you've been to a few before, you might learn a thing or two, and I encourage your questions, as always, throughout the stream. Sable Scotch, Lockie, good to see you both. Thank you for tuning in. Okay, here we go. I'm going to actually have a smell of this first. It's a biggie, that one, but it's what I needed. It's actually a Society Distillery 6, that one. I have a soft spot for the Distillery 6, and I think their whiskey is always underrated, especially even their core range, their single malt. I think I've only got one single malt, Glendeveron 12, they call it. It's not actually called Glendeveron Distillery, it's called Macduff. I could be, actually, I don't want to get that wrong, but yeah, not off the top of my head. But anyway, there we go. My hair is playing up a bit tonight, so any comments about the hair? Here we go. One of my other tips I'm going to add, and I'm sure Andrew carried some of this, covered some of it of this last night, but here are some other tips I want to add in. Plot your course. Now, what I mean by that is take your time to work out in the week leading up to the fair which exhibitors are going to be there, and some whiskey fairs and shows even have a little map that you can download on their website before the session starts. A lot of them don't. Where you can plot where each exhibit is going to be, and that way you can start plotting a course for where you want to go on the day of the fair. So that might be an example of saying, like, you want to try this, and this, and they're the ones you really don't want to miss. So you can sort of grade them into definitely don't want to miss, are interested, try, and don't care. And that would be sort of the three categories I'd do it in. So in a whiskey fair scenario, there'd be at least 3 or 4 exhibitors that I definitely don't want to miss, and I want to make sure I drop in on. And it might not just be for the whiskey, it might be for the people who I know are working behind the stand. And it might be old friends from in the industry, or it might just be some of the whiskey that I know they're going to have with them that I'm really interested to try. So that's normally 3 or 4 at least stands out of the, say, 30 or 40 or 50 stands, depending on how many they can fit in the room. There might be sort of that many that you see and go, oh, I absolutely have to try that. I don't want to miss out on that one. So that might be the first thing to do, is to map your course. I use 3 categories. Absolutely can't miss. I have to see these people or whiskies. Second one is, I'd like to try them. I'm interested. And third one is, I just don't care. And you have to be completely honest with yourself. If you are a regular whiskey drinker and you are not new to the whiskey game, then perhaps something like the Lafroig stand, or perhaps something like, I don't know, the Wild Turkey stand at a fair or live or festival, whatever it is, you probably know their product quite well. Maybe you don't need, you know that they haven't got anything really new on the stand. You've seen the list of bottlings in the menu, something like that. You don't need to see them. I don't mean don't care like I don't care. I mean like that's not a priority for me to see them. But there might be something like when you're traveling through, there might be an independent bottler. There might be a new single malt. For instance, if I ever see something like Cotswolds or Wolfburn at the moment at whiskey fairs or shows or fests, that's exciting. They're new distilleries, so I love trying things from new distilleries, seeing where progress is being made, what's changing, what isn't changing, what shows promise and what doesn't. So it's always interesting to try those. Second tip I'm going to give for tonight. If the whiskey fair, festival, whatever, has a VIP session, and most of them do, see if you can get tickets for that one. Now, sometimes a VIP session doesn't mean anything too much more remarkable. I know for the Oak Barrel one, it is quite remarkable. I know that it means that every single stand have like a super premium release, and that's something quite cool. In our case, it was a members only releases of 3 different premium releases, or one Vaults and 2 premium, I think. So examples of like where we've got, an example of beef at the Society would pull out something like a black label one, a premium livery one, as our VIP dram. And that's quite exciting for us because we get to share around something quite special. It might be like a 139, or it might be a 35 or a 23 or whatever it is, whatever the code is, and we pull something out special. We go, this is for us to share around, and not just for members, but for the VIP session. It's also a much reduced number at the VIP session. So if you're fitting like even like 250, 300 people into each fair session, if the VIP session might be limited to 60 or 50 people, that's really cool because then you get a much closer engagement with each of the exhibitors. And it's for a full hour normally. The Oak Barrel one's a full hour. I don't know how a lot of different fairs and shows operate them very differently. And as Andrew said last night, we are dipping our toes more into fairs and festivals a bit more this year at the Society. And we are going to be at the Whisky Fair in Sydney, the Oak Barrel Whisky Fair here in Sydney. And they are going to be integral to the Scotch Malt Whisky Society's Whisky Champs this year, which is still going ahead. We've had a discussion about it. I'll talk about that later on. Did the Oak Barrel show offer a VIP ticket? Yes, it did, Sally. And it's a very... and by the way, that's going to be included... I'll talk about that later. Yes, the the VIP ticket to the Oak Barrel Whisky Fair is a thing. Jay Davis, good to see you, mate. Hope you're well. Mr. Dan15, good to see you. So they are examples of where, like, a VIP session at some of these whisky fairs, they're not all worth it. Some of them are a bit sort of like a way for the fair to make more money out of the ticket, but not actually provide a whole lot more benefit. I'm going to be completely honest with you on that. But just if you look at the benefit of some of them, and you say, well, is it capped at a certain number? Is it a smaller number of people in the hall for the first hour? So you can have a closer engagement with each of the stands, and there's some special drams on offer from each of the stands, or maybe a VIP masterclass at the beginning or something. That's really quite cool. That might be something worth checking out. The third tip I'm going to offer tonight is ask questions. Ask questions. So ask as many questions of the ambassador, host, distiller, representative that is behind or in front of the stand. They should know a lot of knowledge about the distillery, and they should know a lot of knowledge about the brand and about what the offering is, the story behind why it was matured, the choosing of the casks. There's some really interesting knowledge that these ambassadors, like myself and many others, have, that we love to talk these stories through with you. Like, we love to have these discussions with you, which was the whole concept behind us having the stage at the Whisky Fair last year. So it was meant that you could sit down, have a chat, have a little mini masterclass, and that was what worked really well. It was like a chance for you to engage with us on a much more sort of casual, quieter level, bit of background music. Wasn't so much just shouting over a table and, getting your little measly pause. We do that as well, and they're really good as well. But it's a chance for us to engage with you with better at the Oak Barrel Whiskey Fair, I'll be honest. And Oak Barrel, we love you. Scotty, if you're watching, we love you, don't worry. But the thing is, asking those questions is not just important, but it's not to get any gotcha moments. It's not to be like, haha, he didn't know the answer to that. It's not that kind of stuff. It's kind of like, I'll say 9 out of 10 times, those ambassadors and reps and for the brand at those tables really know their stuff, and they've gone to great lengths to research it. They've possibly visited the distillery a number of times that they're representing, or they at least should have. They know the team, they know the casks, they know the story behind the brand and the story behind the spirit and the reasoning, and I like to say the why behind it as well. And that's really interesting to talk to people about and discover more about it rather than just taste, and walk home a bit wobbly. Malia Barry says, some of the masterclasses I've done at Stanford, you can be lucky to have collector's whiskey and some very aged. I don't know those ones, Malia Barry, but it sounds like fun. I'll have to check that out. Second one I'll say, fourth tip I'll have for tonight is peat is last. Now I always preference peat near the end rather than I go proof then peat when it comes to tasting things. So I can taste something that's unpeated at 65.5% and then taste something that's 43%. I'm still pretty good. I have a glass of water in between, but I'm still pretty good. Whereas if I start having peated whiskies, it's generally hard to go back to unpeated. You'll find your own preference for this, and you'll find that if you go to a rum, suddenly it's hard to go back to whiskey, or if you go to a gin, it's hard to go back to rum, or whatever it is. It's like whatever you're focusing on. I generally stay within the same spirit category, with a little bit of variance, of course. But if you're drinking Scotch malt whiskey, then you can probably jump around a bit to rye and bourbon and whatnot. But I normally stay in the same category, and I normally preference peat at the end. A lot of beginners make that mistake, especially when going to their first whiskey fairs. They see things like, in years prior, I mean, the audience is changing every year, but in years prior, you'd see things like people running for the Octomores, and you'd be like, what? And they've just walked in the doors, and the first thing they want to try are these super heavily peated Bruichladdich spirits. And it's like, yeah, they're great. Like, don't get me wrong, they're good spirit. But it's like, if you're starting there, when someone offers you something that might be 43, 46%, or even 55%, whatever it is, and it's unpeated, it's gonna be a bit underwhelming. It's gonna be like, oh, I'm missing something here. The nuance is gone. All I can taste is peat. All I can taste is charcoal embers in my mouth. And there's a time and place for that, but it's not really. For me personally, I either preference peat right at the end, or I don't have it at all. And I enjoy peated whiskey, but I wouldn't say I'm a massive peat head like some of my friends are and some of my colleagues are. I like peated whiskey. I enjoy it. I prefer, in fact, more and more I'm preferencing, whilst I'm just getting a bit off topic here, but when it comes to peated whiskey, personally I'm preferencing more Highland and non-Islay peated whiskies. Some lovely Speyside peated whiskies, some lovely Highland peated whiskies, English peated whiskey, Indian peated whiskey, things like that, which I find fascinating because of not just the story, but the taste, the flavour profile, the whole story is just fantastic behind some of them, and they're and are often overlooked, so they're still really well priced, and because they're not from Islay. And so it's a bit like unpeated Islay spirit doesn't get too many people excited, like unpeated Bunnahabhain, unpeated Bruichladdich. It's fine, it's lovely. In fact, I personally love it. I love an unpeated Bunnahabhain, but people often overlook those for the same reasons. It's because if you're going to spend money on Islay, it should be Big Peat. I don't agree with that, but that's okay. Yes, yes, great shirt, mate. Vale Duncan McGillivray, sorry. Yes, Vale Duncan, he was the production manager, I believe. I'm going to get his title wrong. Let's just say he was an icon of Bruichladdich for many, many years before it reopened and after. So he was a huge part of that distillery's history and the way that whiskey's been made. And yes, in memory of Duncan, I am wearing an Octomore t-shirt tonight. This is something I picked up at Facial last year, which with the bottle of Event Horizon that I poured out for members at the Bruichladdich night last year. Speaking of Bruichladdich night, that Bruichladdich night was part of the Gathering series. The Gathering is coming back this year. I think I've already mentioned that before, but keep an eye out for September, October. The Gathering series is coming back. We are still all guns ahead at the moment at the Society, so I'll talk about that in a moment. My last tip is one that will echo what Andrew said last night, and so I thought it was actually worth mentioning again. Eat food, drink water. If you're at these whiskey fairs and festivals, eat food and drink water. I can't stress that enough. Yes, you might need to go to the bathroom and a few more times than some of your friends, but you'll leave feeling much fresher than them as well. Because if you're drinking a lot of water, you're not going to completely write yourself off. You're going to maintain a level of sobriety, just enough to get you through the fair often, but just enough to keep your palate a bit fresh as well. So lots of water. And the food offering changes from fair to fair. Some fairs do it a bit okay, some do it really well. Either way, line the stomach before, if you can, have lunch before you come, even if it's the daytime session, and you'll feel a lot better at the end of it. Joel Nem09 says, first SMWS purchase was non-peated bunny. Love that and Brookletty. Yeah, me too, mate. Me too, Joel. I mean, they're fantastic spirits, especially when unpeated, because there's a lovely sort of like sugary sort of like coastal notes to them that you don't get when it's sometimes just a lot of peat. I've got to be complaining. I've said it before. I love peated whiskey. I'm just more of a fan of the more nuanced peated whiskies. I love like a delicate aged Highland whiskey or a delicate aged Islay whiskey that's just got like is lightly peated. It's got a lot of character. It's got different complexities to it. It doesn't need to be absolutely hell for leather, peat, fire, brimstone in your mouth every time. Yes, there's a time and place for that. I have other heavily peated whiskies that I enjoy at other times. But nuance goes a long way when it comes to peated whiskies. And I think of it the same as I do for hops in beer. Less is more. When is the Brookletty tasting coming to Melbourne? Jay Davis, come on, man, come on. Melbourne gets a whole lot of other experiences as well. We can't always replicate the same experience between Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide, Hobart, Perth. But we can try. Canberra. Almost forgot you guys in Canberra. Love you guys in Canberra. In fact, we've got Taste and Test coming up next month in Canberra. That's going to be so much fun. Look, they go to Brookletty night. You guys get heaps of great nights in Melbourne. I can't always guarantee a replication of the same night because the stocks of that Brookletty night were very, very rare and limited. And I'll bring something down for you special. I'll bring something special for us to dram on, Davis. Don't worry. Drink a Longmorn 16-year refill bourbon cask at 55% signatory. Yes, believe it would fit your personal profile really well, mate. Sandra. Yeah, Sable's got to really appreciate that. You know, I'm a big fan of like refill casks, as I've said before. Hashtag team refill. Refill casks are a godsend to whiskey, in my opinion. They are just that perfect balance of where the spirit is not being over encumbered by the oak. They're a nice mid-50s. And by the way, pardon me, I love Longmorn. I love that distillery profile. There's a reason why Longmorn's considered the cream of the crop for the Shivers brand. It's absolutely that rich. It's quite malty. It's really oily. It's quite mouth-coating as a spirit. That's why Sevens, keep an eye out for our Society Sevens. They come through quite frequently, actually. We've had even one or two already this year, and we're only in April. May. We're only in May. May. We're not in May. We're in March. Wake up. Okay. Water and food is so important, I agree. And I was a mess up there last year. Yeah, Lockie, you were. That was good fun. Is SMWS Sydney Whisky Fair again this year? You better believe we are. Absolutely. Unless the world's gone to hell in a handbasket, we are absolutely going to be there. Whiskey Legend, John, good to see you. What's your take on tipping out whiskey that you don't like? I feel so bad doing that to any whiskey. Sally, that's a really good point. Most whiskey fairs do and should have spittoons. And I'm perfectly fine with tipping out whiskey you're not enjoying. Especially in the whiskey fair context. You're there to try a lot, not to force yourself to drink, only 6 or 7. You're there to have you could have sort of 12, 15, 18 samples maybe before your palate starts getting a bit fatigued, depending on how experienced you are with managing that process and your water you're drinking and everything. I'm perfectly fine with tipping out samples. I do it all the time, personally. I even do it in my office. I do it at tastings. I do it at events. I do it in every capacity. It's uncommon I'll do it if I'm drinking whiskey and for enjoyment because I already know what I want then, and I'm not going to tip that out. But if I'm sampling whiskey at a fair, then that's fine. You can tip out what you're not enjoying. If you get a snarl or a sneer from the presenter or the host or the ambassador, don't worry about them. Seriously, it's you're there to enjoy it how you want to enjoy it. Here we go. 1638 Acme Ghost Cream Highland, one of the best peated whiskies I've ever had. I'm going to quote you on that, Lockie, because I'm going to absolutely, completely agree with you on that. That was an amazing peated whiskey. It was a farmyard, a smoking bonfire farmyard in a glass. And it's like, how is it that good? So clean, yet so like deliciously oily and rich and smoky. Lovely whiskey. It's JHerd77, by the way. I don't know if you saw that or not. It's created a new account. JHerds! the real JHerds is back. Okay, Joel Nem09, I'm going to go with JHerds. I'm going to keep calling JHerds in, if I remember. Shane Scotch joined, Alhan's joined. I was talking to someone you know, Matt, that said he might be breaking out some old Longmorn SMWS bottles for an event. Yeah. Joel, you are completely correct, and you know, and I'll ask you to keep that under wraps. I know exactly who you mean. Yes, that's going to be really exciting. We'll announce that later in the year. We'll see what's going on there. It's all very early days though for that one. Evening Gaucho. Cool. Okay. Well, that was my tips on the sort of the second part of whiskey fairs and festivals and how to navigate them. Just some of my personal tips to follow on from some of Andrew's personal tips from last night. He and I have very differing opinions on things. Speaking of differing opinions, he said last night that his colleague Matt Bailey, that's me, often refers to these kind of labels as paper label bottlings, and he wants me to stop calling them that and call them original bottlings. It was a nice cheeky remark. In fact, this one is one that we opened, that Andrew and I opened for the Vaults 1682 dinner last year. One of the most premium experiences we've ever done, and of course that was 123.1, the first ever cask out of Distillery 123. And I can tell you right now that this was possibly one of the most delightful whiskies I've ever had. It has nothing left in the bottle, not even a skerrick of a drop. This is one of the most delightful whiskies I've ever had. Hands down, no contest. Fantastic stuff. So he doesn't like me calling them paper labels. The reason, I'm going to give you a reason why the paper label designation came about. It's a paper label. That much is very, very obvious. The reason why it got called a paper label is because the following design iteration, which looks like where we developed our unique bottle shape from onwards, we moved from the tall green glass to staying with green but going with our unique shape. These are sort of plasticated labels, if you like, and they have a sort of they were plastic, if you like. They were like not even polyplastic. They're just straight up sort of laminate plastic labels. So it was sort of like paper labels, plastic labels, so that sort of stuck in my head for a long time, and I think I got used to calling them paper versus plastic, or current at the time, current. And of course now we're back to paper again. So I could call these, well, they are mostly paper. It's a paper cotton composite. But this is so I'm going to call these. You know what, Andrew? I'm afraid I have to contest you once more. Paper, plastic, cotton. So maybe not. No, look, original, plastic, then current, maybe. Anyway, it's all in jest. I love communicating through public live streams. Okay. Oh boy, don't tell anyone I got it. Haha. Okay. Paper labels. Yeah. Put a poll up. Yeah. Okay. Bailey spill-proof labels. Yes. Yeah. Whiskey Ledger, you know me too well. These are definitely called Bailey spill-proof labels because they're plastic. When I have this habit of when I pour a whiskey, one drop would always come out of the bottle as I finish pouring it and run over the label. Oh, that was a good whiskey. See, that wasn't even too far off that first one. Yeah, that was actually a complete coincidence. I've done that tonight. 123.1 and 123.8. There you go. That same distillery, just 7 casks apart. But the new labels are definitely, the current labels, are definitely not Bailey proof. They will definitely smudge, mark, and have whiskey poured down the front of them. I hate it when mum and dad disagree. Thanks, Lockie. No, I'm not going to indulge in that in a reply to that one. So let me just finish up by saying tonight, it's a bit of a more sort of serious note, if you like. There's a lot of uncertainty at the moment when it comes to big events, gatherings, and things like that in the world at the moment, as we know. And it's always tiptoeing around the line and working out what can and can't be done and everything like that. I want you all to know, I want all members to know, as of today, and today is Wednesday, the 11th of March. Everything is still full gas ahead, full steam ahead at the society. We trust our members to have enough common sense if they have the flu or of any description to not come to an event anyway. And we'll be making this communication a bit more formal to our membership in the next coming days. But the Champs is still absolutely still going ahead. The gathering in September, October is still absolutely going ahead. All of our tastings every month are still going ahead. Tickets are still selling online. People still want to come to them. We'll make a formal announcement. And yes, high-proof alcohol does kill germs. So keep yourself good, keep yourself well, keep yourself in fine spirits, as we like to say. No pun intended, pun fully intended. And I will catch you all tomorrow, Thursday. Tomorrow? Today, Thursday? Yeah, tomorrow's Thursday. I'll catch you all Thursday. That's all from me tonight. Really appreciate you tuning in, having a chat, having a yarn, and making some fantastic comments, as always. And I'll talk more about some spirits tomorrow night that perhaps don't inspire or do inspire. And I'll talk about what that means. I'm going to expand on that a little bit more tomorrow night. Okay, over and out. Have a great night.